Hello, everybody. This is Amber Hines. I am one of the lead organizers for WordPress Accessibility Day, which is happening next week on September 27th through 28th. We're super excited. And in advance of the event, I have with me Matt Medeiros of Gravity Forms. Hi, Matt.
Hey Amber, this is where you cue like the applause music. Like if we had a soundboard, that'd be awesome.
We're doing this from Restream, and I have never really played with this, but there is a whole music section, but I have no
Oh,
idea
now's
what
the
that would
time.
do.
Now's the time.
I can only imagine how accessible some of that might be as far as being able to hear and do that. But do you want to introduce yourself and tell
Yeah,
everyone, if they're not familiar, a little bit about Gravity Forms?
sure. Yeah. So Matt Medeiros, I do the podcast for Gravity Forms. I help out with WordPress community, and I'm generally on the marketing team at Gravity Forms. I've been a customer of Gravity Forms for over a decade. Gravity Forms, I know, is just celebrating or Rocket Genius, the parent company behind it, celebrating 15 years in business. It's one of the long-standing, most trusted plugins, not just contact form plugins, but trusted plugins in the entire WordPress ecosystem. And again, I've been using them for years. It is not just a contact form, but as many folks watching or listening to this afterwards know, that it enables people to do a whole heck of a lot of things. Amber, when I interviewed you on our podcast that aired on Monday, you talked about how you used it on the wpaccessibility.day website for not just the contact form and user registration, but sort of these other steps, these other what I'll call automated steps afterwards. You can create a post from an entry form. You can draft that post, and then you can take other data and sort of map them together, for lack of a better phrase. But Gravity Forms allows you to do a whole bunch of things, complex things, simple things, payment things, all the things with Gravity Forms, and it's a very powerful tool.
Yeah. And so where can people find that podcast episode? What's the best
Yeah.
place?
Yeah, so gravityforms.com/breakdown. It's gravityforms.com/breakdown, or just search for Breakdown Gravity Forms in your favorite podcast app. You can find the podcast there. Goes out every 2 weeks, and it's a sort of variety show. We talk a little bit about the updates to Gravity Forms. There's a lot with Gravity Forms. You have Gravity Forms core, just like there's core WordPress. We treat Gravity Forms as a core. Then there's all the add-ons that we provide: Zapier, Stripe, PayPal, conversational forms. Then we have certified developers. We have third-party add-ons. So there's a lot that's like always happening. So we try to keep people informed with it, and then we pull in conversations with folks like Amber to talk about what they do with Gravity Forms throughout the space. So it's pretty fun. Keep it about 25 minutes an episode every 2 weeks. Breakdown.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that you had me on and we could talk a little bit about how we use it on the WordPress Accessibility Day website. I won't, go too much into that here because I want people to go listen to the podcast episode. But yes, in addition to Gravity Forms being a platinum sponsor of the event, which you've been a sponsor 2 years now, and we very much appreciate that. We do also use Gravity Forms, as you mentioned, quite a bit on the website. Can you give us some background on why Gravity Forms is interested in sponsoring WordPress Accessibility Day?
Yeah. So, as somebody else who's in the WordPress community, creating content, building out these sort of like unique platform experiences, informing people, supporting people in the community, I appreciate that. First, I'm just saying I appreciate that Gravity Forms supports you and the Accessibility Day initiative because it's important, right? We look at WordPress community is pretty big, small on a grand scale. When you look at it from the world, you're like only 40,000 people, but that's just 40,000 people like in a Slack group, which means that there's probably like 100,000 people in the world who are like really intrigued and really touching WordPress and care about sort of the inside baseball of WordPress. But then with accessibility, now we're talking millions of people that accessibility is important to, affects them, and is just a top priority for people who are using Gravity Forms with WordPress. You're building sites, you're having people input data. And one of the things that the story that I like to tell is when I interviewed you for my podcast many years ago, or maybe a couple of years ago,
Mhm.
we were talking about accessibility and how it's not just sort of screen readers and folks that might have disabilities who are trying to interact with a website, but I think you brought up an example of like a new parent, middle of the night. You have your child with you; they're crying. You're trying to find like the phone number to the doctors, to call them or to look up information, and it's
With
for
one
these
hand.
with one hand, and it's like it's for these
Yeah.
moments where it's like having an accessible site to work straightforward and accurately when you're in these moments of either stress or distress, or you're just trying to find these things. It's a very important part of building out a site. And you and I have talked about this before. I am a former agency owner. This is something that
Mhm.
clients demand. It's not even it's a law for most of us, but clients also demand this stuff, especially when their website is being used, in the public eye, or they have the needs of accessibility. Famously, I remember telling you a story. I shipped a website that I was helping build with another design agency. It was an art museum, and we were just about to go live,
Mhm.
and somebody on the board was just like, "So this is ADA compliant, right?" We're
And you're
like,
like,
"Wait a
"Wait a
minute,
minute,
wait a
what?"
minute. When did we did we talk about this?" So getting
Mhm.
this information out front and center to people like me when I was running an agency, to those in the audience who are just learning this stuff, it's important to support Accessibility Day and invest where we can to help get the message out.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate it, and it is a really good point, to say here too, because we may have some people watching this who aren't as familiar with the event or accessibility, but it really does, as you said, it touches a lot of people. Um, we're all temporarily abled. That's what a lot of us in the accessibility community like to say. We might have perfect vision right now, or at least once I put my contacts in, I have perfect vision. Uh, but every year I go to the eye doctor and it gets a little bit worse, right?
Yeah.
Or, we could have an illness or an injury or something happen that's unexpected, beyond the normal aging process. And I mean, the World Health Organization says it's 1 in 5 people who has a disability. So it
Yeah.
is a large percent of the population. And really, if you think about the functions on a website, having accessible forms is actually probably one of the most important touch points on a website for accessibility. If you have an e-commerce site, then it's probably like your checkout page, right? But for non-e-commerce websites, forms really, that's how you're getting your conversions. People
Right.
joining your email list, people contacting you for your services or for support, or doing any other number of things. And so really, I think that's why accessibility, that's probably one of the biggest areas for accessibility.
Yeah. And in speaking to the team, prior to this, I've only been at Gravity Forms for about 8 months now, and I've never really spent as much time like learning this stuff, learning like all the things you need to do to build forms correctly until I joined Gravity Forms. Again, been using it for over a decade, just like as a user, dragging and dropping and building forms, and not really knowing like what goes into like doing this stuff properly. But I know Gravity Forms does a lot with trying to automate's not the right word, but when you put a field in without, let's say, a description or a label, or there's like a contrast error, like it's going to be hard to read, or hard for somebody to use keyboard navigation with a particular set of fields that you might have selected, Gravity Forms will warn the user and indicate, hey, look, if you're using it like this, if you're going to ship it without, let's say, the label or the description, you might, want to realize that anyone who's using a screen reader might not know what the heck this form is. And like you said before,
Mhm.
it's also for me, like I, as a human who's filling out this gigantic form, I was just registering my kids for something the other day for school. And it's just like, people, I mean, they didn't care what they were just putting. I don't even know what they used to make this archaic form that they had me filling out. But you're just like, where am I in this form? it's
Mhm.
just this one gigantic thing. There's no breaks. And now, as I'm somebody who's helping other customers build forms, I'm like, no, man, you have to have you tried like conversational forms? Have you tried grouping fields? Some descriptions
Mhm.
for these new
Under sections.
sections? Yeah, like pagination through this stuff because my head hurts just looking at this. Um, and Gravity Forms tries to guide the user as they build their form so that they don't make those make those mistakes. Um,
Yeah, I actually think, to be honest, I don't know. So WordPress core has a few like accessibility notices in them. I
yeah,
have never seen, and I don't know if you've seen, because I know like you use a lot of different WordPress plugins, but I have never seen in all of the WordPress plugins I've tried before outside of Gravity Forms where they also put accessibility warnings to the creator. And it's one of the coolest things I think I've seen when Gravity Forms did the whole accessibility revamp was they weren't just focusing on how do we make sure our fields are accessible on the front end? They also were putting guidance and education for their actual customers who are building forms. And
yeah.
I don't know, have you ever seen any other plugins that do anything like that?
No, I mean, I haven't. And again, like you, I've used a ton of plugins. I haven't seen anyone with that commitment. I have a cheat sheet in front of me with a screenshot from one of our, warnings in Gravity Forms. And it says, an empty label violates WCAG. Please use descriptive text for your label to hide the label using field label visibility settings. And then you can click and learn more. And it's bringing you to that like educational resource. Like, this is what you're missing out here, and oh, by the way, learn more, which is important
Mhm.
because when I tell the story about being the agency owner who didn't know anything about this stuff, I didn't even know where to learn it. Right, like I
Mhm.
kind of knew it was out there. I knew I had to do this thing, but I had no idea where to start. One, it's why WP Accessibility Day is great, but also Gravity Forms going that extra mile and say, this is what you're missing, and here's where you can go learn it and be educated around it is like super helpful. Any other plugin would just be any other plugin that actually went the extra mile for accessibility and gave you those warnings would just say, hey, this is not accessible. But, I know I'm biased, but I feel like we go that extra step that says, hey, and here's where you can go learn about it too, because it's important that
Mhm.
you understand the whole concept, and not just the error flag that comes up.
Yeah, I think for sure if we have any plugin devs watching this, this would be something that I'd love for them to take inspiration from Gravity Forms on, which is providing more guidance to users in the dashboard. Because the reality too of accessibility is that the plugin code or the theme code, it only goes so far if the content creators are entering content in a way that's not accessible.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. So you mentioned that when you joined Gravity Forms, you got a whole introduction into like building forms the right way.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious, did they have any extra training on like accessibility things or other resources that's available for the public or the team at Gravity Forms that maybe other companies could emulate or try and do something similar?
So, I think probably like a lot of product companies, there's, ownership, like team owners that own different like parts of the product. There isn't like a formal component that we had or like a formal syllabus that I had to go through to kind of learn the stuff. But it was meeting with each team member who has a hand in like owning the accessibility um, whatever structure to implement into the product, right? If somebody brings in a new add-on into the mix, that person who might be developing, XYZ add-ons also kind of oversees accessibility, and they'll say, hey, we need to just like get together, work through this so that we can make sure that when we're bringing in this add-on, like we're bringing in SMTP fairly soon, and making sure that all of that is going to be accessible and all of the components in that are going to be accessible. So what I'm getting at is there are people who are really committed to not only accessibility but the ownership of their different areas of the product. And I mean, I sat with people on the team when I first started, sort of taking these one-on-one meetings, and I mean, it was just like mind blowing. Like the things that I had never thought about when building forms before we
Mhm.
even get to like the conditional logic components and like the edge cases and everything that they have seen, Gravity Forms have seen before I joined, was just mind blowing. And then you wonder why, people are always like, why can't we have, I don't know, insert your favorite shiny object into a contact form. And it's like, because there are, millions of people using this thing, and it has to be rock solid at Gravity Forms. It can't just be, oh, you love that, what's your favorite chat GPT bot of the month? Throw it in, right? And then we just ship it, right? And just keep going. There's a lot to think about. So it's a long way of saying, like, there wasn't like a formal training process, but each person who's in charge of building out those particular components are just like so passionate and so smart. I've never seen an engineering team like this before. I'm just proud to be part of the team.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to hear as a user of Gravity Forms that there's some focus on, making sure things are actually ready for production before they go to I mean, I've never thought that there wasn't, because I've never seen it not that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
But I'll say, like, as a plugin developer who has a much smaller user base than Gravity Forms, personally, like, I get the appeal. Like, it's hard sometimes to say no to, like, the shiny object or the feature. So
Yeah.
the fact that they are able to do that is great. Like, they're being very focused on, what's best for the users and best for all the sites is really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. It's just such things can get, if you just look at core and everyone, it's a human thing, really. It's when you look at WordPress and, there's this desire to just have more for the sake of having more. It's like, it's not easy to just, especially when you're dedicated to sort of backwards compatibility. It's not easy to just keep like throwing the latest feature, the latest buzzword into your product without really doing damage with a lot of other stability of forms. And we have people. I talked to somebody the other day, and I think they had like 800 fields in a form, and I'm
Oh
just like,
boy.
I don't even know how. What are you doing? Right?
How do
And
you
it's like
manage that? I really want to know. Was this
yeah,
like a government website?
it had something to do with insurance, I believe. So it
Oh,
was
okay.
probably like a zillion questions about, doing claims and stuff like that.
And there's
We,
probably a lot of conditional logic happening on that form, right? Like, it's
yeah,
not like somebody has to fill out 800 fields. It's just
right,
there's like a tree that
right,
happens if this,
right.
then that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's impressive. I'm
Yeah.
not
It's
sure I would want to manage that form.
yeah. Yeah. No, neither would I.
Yeah. That's an interesting. Are there ever discussions on that at Gravity Forms? Like, at what point should you have just like multiple separate forms versus like 10 forms that all come off of this one answer to this one radio question at the very beginning?
Yeah. I mean, that's actually something like I sort of, as like the new person coming in onto the team, um, like I felt a lot of stress like going into the situation, because these people are like, I'm first week I chat with everybody, I'm like, wow, these people are super smart. And like sometimes you feel like I'm in the wrong place. You start looking around like they wanted me to do this. And then I started like, and then I have to like ask these questions about, the certain like edge cases or how to do things. And I start learning and discovering what things that Gravity Forms has, which I didn't even know existed. But
Mm,
we often go back, or I'll often go back to them and be like, is there a better way to do this? And usually it's conditional logic, and then like field grouping or like the multiple pages to help organize the forms.
mhm.
We have something coming that's going to make that life a lot easier for people.
Ooh,
Uh,
can you tease it?
it will make like that person who had the 800 plus fields was like, oh my God, I want this now kind of thing that's coming. I can't say when it's going to come, but it will help managing, long forms, forms with many complex fields, and it'll make doing like bulk edits across fields a whole heck of a lot easier. So, look
Ooh,
for that. Look for that soon. Hopefully by, I mean, I know we're already heading into October, but it should be here by the end of the year for sure.
that's exciting. So you had also earlier mentioned conversational forms. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that is for someone who's not familiar? And I'm curious, is it out of beta? Is it available now?
Yeah, it is available now. Yep, it's
Okay,
stable
cool.
release. I believe stable release. Yeah, stable release. Yeah, it's out of beta now because I know we did almost like 10 beta rounds with that. So
So
conversational
what's a conversational form? Yeah.
Yeah, so conversational form, your traditional form is like everyone knows, you create your Gravity form, you go and you plop it into a WordPress page or post, there it is sitting in the middle of your page. A conversational form, with air quotes, is a form that overtakes the entire screen or the entire viewport. Um, Typeform is a familiar sort of UI UX experience where you're just asking the question. It's sort of like one question, enter your name, go to the next page, enter in another piece of data, go to the next page. And it's called conversational forms because that's sort of like the context. Like you're supposed to make the user feel like you're just having this quick conversation with you instead of, oh God, there's 20 fields I got to fill out. Um,
Hmm.
and then you can wrap
And there's
that in.
no header, footer, right? Like there's not
Correct.
really the distracting elements on the page.
That's exactly it. It's a distraction-free context of filling out a form, and then you can make it look better. You can do different background images. You know, you can have a welcome screen, an exit screen, and sort of like design those a little bit more intuitively. We have a whole gallery. If you go to gravityforms.com, all the way in the footer, there's a conversational forms gallery where you can kind of see the different examples that you can put together through the Gravity Forms interface. Technically, it runs slightly different than a regular form because you actually assign it a slug or a permalink in WordPress because
Mhm.
it does take
Its
over
own
like that
page.
page. Yeah. So, you know, that's like the biggest difference when people start getting into this and they'll be like, hey, can I like embed this on into a page? It's like, well, no, you'd use a regular form for that. But if you want something for like a landing page, you're selling tickets to an event, you know are going to do a shorter form, and you just want to make sure that everything is in focus while the person's inputting data. Conversational forms is a great way to do that. Keyboard shortcuts back and forth with the arrow keys, hitting enter, sort of makes it that conversational type experience.
Yeah, I actually had a thought so I played around with it during one of the betas. I didn't realize it was out, so I'm gonna have to go check what the final version is. And I was actually thinking that it could be really interesting as an alternative for creating a more accessible experience,
Mm-hmm.
because there are people who find a lot of things distracting. So people with ADD sometimes have challenges on websites when there's like a main content area and a sidebar and like header and footer. And I mean, it gets even worse if people have like videos playing and ads or whatever, right? But I almost could see like you could have your regular Gravity form, like a contact form, and like maybe duplicate it so you have the same fields in a conversational. And on your contact page, you could like have like a button they could press that's like, distraction free mode or something, and it would
Yeah.
link them. It wouldn't be a button, it would be a link. Let's be correct in our terminology here. But like you could link them and they could have a choice of doing a normal form or that as an alternative if that works better for them and makes it easier for them to focus on what you're asking.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you can literally duplicate it through the interface, turn it into a conversational form, or vice versa. Start with a conversational form and then turn that into a regular form. And yeah, on that page, um, I guess technically you could use like if you wanted to make it look fancy, you could have uh, the Gutenberg button block where it looks like a button, like
Mhm.
a call to action button, and it says, distraction free, and they can click that, which would link them to the conversational form. But sure, yeah, that'd be fantastic use case for it.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about WordPress Accessibility Day, shifting back towards that. Um, Rianne from Level and Morgan from Gravity Forums are going to be giving a lightning talk. Do you know much about their talk, or I want to tease that a little bit for anyone?
I don't.
Am I putting you on the spot?
Yeah. I don't. All I know is I saw she is working on it. I know she's working on it because she had posted in marketing for Dustin, who does our YouTube channel, to help her with some of the video editing for the session. But I haven't
Yep.
watched it. She didn't post the video, so I don't know actually like
Okay.
what she's going to put inside of it.
Okay, cool. Well, so I do know it's called Creating Accessible Forms the Easy Way. So I think for somebody who's new to form accessibility, that would be a great way to tune in. And it's 15 minutes. So it's going to be a quick way to watch and get like a primer. And that's going to be at 500 UTC, which for me in America, in Chicago, is midnight. But I will be there watching and in the chat. So
Fantastic.
have you gone through the session? Are there any other talks that look sort of interesting to you, Matt?
Creating an animation pause button in WordPress. I mean, I just want to know. Like,
I know, I'm excited about that too.
I just want to know it. Like, just show me how to do that.
Yeah,
and it's funny. I was making sort of like what you hinted, what you said before about like a lot of distractions on a page. I was making reservations at a restaurant for my wife's birthday on Friday, and whatever. Like, I went to their website, got the information to call them. And then like there was the music. Like I got back to my laptop and there was like music playing. I'm looking all over the place for music, and it was their website. And I'm like, it's 2023, and
why are
people
you playing
still
music?
have music when you go to a website. Looks like a great restaurant though. But if there was a pause button, that'd be great.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So that one is going to be Danielle Zaccaro, and they're going to be talking at 3 o'clock UTC, 10 p.m. America, Chicago time. So I know there's so many things because videos, music, even GIFs. So animated GIFs is another thing. If you have an animated GIF, technically that would be a web content accessibility guidelines violation if it plays for more than 5 seconds, which they almost all do. You're like
Right.
perpetually looping. So
Right. Infinity, right?
yeah.
Does that mess with screen reading software? Like, does it stop at an animated GIF and just not know what to do with it?
No, so an animated GIF isn't really going to be a problem for a screen reader. It's going to read more like an image.
Okay.
A lot of them don't have appropriate alt text.
Right.
So it might read the file name if it didn't have alt text. The animations are really more a problem for people who have, like we talked about, like ADD,
Right. You're
or
scrolling
some
and you see it.
people, yeah, or if there's a lot of rapid changes, then people with photosensitive epilepsy, they could potentially trigger a seizure. So
Yeah.
now the playing music, like you mentioned on that one website, that could be a problem. You know, if it's classical and it's soft, maybe it's okay. But if it has lyrics in it and there's a screen reader trying to read out the page and you're getting music that you can't, and they're like fighting each other, that would definitely be a problem. So
Yeah. It was soft and classical, this one. So it was just weird.
yeah, I don't know if I've seen a website with music for a really long time, but I feel like that was a request I used to get back in like 2010, like from yoga studios. So, yeah. Well, it has been super fun to hang out with you and chat about Gravity Forms. I'm excited for whatever feature is going to make it easier to bulk edit and manage very large fields, which we're all going to have to, or very large forms, which we're all going to have to watch out for later this year.
Yeah.
Feature
Yeah.
with no name.
I hope I didn't overpromise on that. I go back to the meeting tomorrow and then like, yeah, you shouldn't say anything. But no, I mean, I know it's coming. Should be by the end of the year. I'm hoping and giving us enough time here, 3 months or 4 months. No, not even 2 months. Once you count the holidays. So hopefully we still make it, but it'll be cool for sure.
Well, I'm going to remind everyone that registration is open. Registration is free for WordPress Accessibility Day. If you go to 2023.wpaccessibility.day, you can register. Once you have registered, go visit Gravity Forms sponsor page. Once you register, you get a login for the website. You can log in and access Gravity Forms swag, which they're giving a 30% discount on any new license. So whether that's a small license or an elite license, you can use that discount, which is pretty amazing. And also you can enter for a chance to win a free 12-month Gravity Forms license for the elite plugin, which has all the add-ons. So definitely go enter and win. And if they want to learn more about Gravity Forms, where should they go?
Yeah, gravityforms.com. If you're already a Gravity Forms user and you're trying to stay up in the know of everything, check out the podcast, gravityforms.com/breakdown.
Thanks so much, Matt.
Thank you.